Hello, my dear friends. Welcome to this special series on Saint Joseph. Our present Holy Father, Pope Francis, declared the year of Saint Joseph, of course. And I think it is important that we come to know who Saint Joseph is based on our understanding of him from the biblical sources. Now, Saint Joseph, of course, is taken for granted by many Filipinos to be an important saint. But if you are going to ask them about their knowledge of Saint Joseph, it is actually very limited. Okay, so who is Saint Joseph for us? Number one, siguro we can say that he is the father of Jesus, the foster father of Jesus, and that's a very obvious answer. The second obvious answer might be that he is the husband of Mary. In terms of patronages, Saint Joseph is also patron of two most important titles niya are actually Saint Joseph as the protector of the church, the guardian of the church, which we celebrate, the husband of Mary and protector of the church every March 19, and Saint Joseph as worker on May 1. So maybe that's the, again, in terms of the feast days of Saint Joseph, those are the most famous here in the Philippines. Saint Joseph as one that is just there, but sometimes we celebrate him, sometimes we don't, no? In a sense that compared to other saints. Like Padre Pio, for example, is so famous now. Parang Saint Joseph is just there. He is there, just a benevolent old man that you can just say hello and then forget. It's something that sometimes we treat Saint Joseph as someone who is important, but that you don't really know who he is, and you really don't feel close to him sometimes. But he is an important figure in the families of faithful. That's why we remember that most often before, the faithful would always put Joseph or Jose in the names of their sons, in the same manner that we place Maria or Mary in the names of daughters before. But nowadays it's no longer true. And before also, it's a very popular folk religiosity among Catholics in the Philippines is that we celebrate this kind of a ritual of San Jose, wherein the Holy Family is honored by the personification of an old man, a young lady, and a little boy. That's the Holy Family. Now, on a personal note, Saint Joseph is also important or significant in my own life. Why? For example, I finished my theological study from Saint Joseph Regional Seminary. My father was named as Jose. And what else? According to my own mother, of course, no, to may she rest in peace, she said that when she was still single and was on the verge of becoming an old maid, losing the prospect of getting married, because she's, before, like if you are in your 20s, late 20s, you're already considered old maid. So she was afraid to become one, and so she prayed to Saint Joseph and asking for a good husband. And then, lo and behold, my father, who is named Jose, courted her. And so my mother took it as a sign from the Lord, the man that she is meant to be with. But it turned out that the marriage failed. But of course, later on, they got reconciled. But that's it. And of course, lastly, my own grandmother. In the family, we have this, we call as Niño Perdido, which we celebrate on January. It was a devotion that was started when my grandmother was born, because she was so sickly that she was about to be, there's a danger, it's a very significant danger that she will die even before reaching a month old. So my great-grandfather made a promise that if my grandma will survive the ordeal, he will celebrate every year Niño Perdido, which means the lost child, no? Which, of course, coincides with the story of the losing and finding of Jesus. That's why in our family, we celebrate this on January, not March or May, but January. And it honors also the same, the Holy Family, and we have the same, reenactment there, or, well, representatives of the Holy Family, an old man, a young lady, and a young boy before the age of 12. And when I was the one who served, no, as in a particular period, of course, until I reached 12 years old. But the tradition in our family, I believe, has already been like 100, and because my grandma died about 102 years old, so that means 22 years ago, no, 22, yeah, 22 years ago, that was already about 102 years in the running. So if you're up to date now, it's about 120 plus years. No? So that's a very long tradition in the family that we have been celebrating, and it was unbroken even during the time of the war, during the Second World War, the Japanese occupation. My grandparents would always celebrate that, my grandma particularly. So that tradition has been with us now for more than 120 years, and I hope it will continue with this, with the rest of the generation, of our generation. And that is precisely why I think we need to reintroduce Saint Joseph to this generation, because while the previous generations might have a love for Saint Joseph, the next generation might not have such a deep devotion to Saint Joseph. Okay, so let us begin our biblical journey, our study into the life of Saint Joseph based on the sacred scriptures, particularly, of course, the Gospels. We will start with the Gospel of Matthew. It's very famous. For those of us in the Philippines who have our Aguinaldo Masses, this is one of the Gospels that is being read, the genealogy according to Matthew. And one of those boring texts, one of those boring texts, because it's just a list of names. I don't know how your priests are trying to make it fun, because there seems to be like an unwritten rule that the Aguinaldo homilies must have to be fun to keep the people awake. But I'm not sure when it comes to this genealogy part. I believe the people are already asleep standing. But this is a very important detail, in the very important material in our understanding of who Saint Joseph is. Genealogies are important because for those who are in the know, especially the members of the family, they will be able to have this oral tradition, these remembrances of their own ancestors, which are very important. These are important in the sense that they are made to be reminded. They are reminded of their past and potentially of their future. The Gospel of Matthew gives us the genealogy in the first chapter, verse 1 to 16. And Matthew divided this into three neat portions. So he divided it into three parts. Of course, the genealogy from Abraham to Jesse, the father of David. And then the second part is that of David up until the deportation to Babylon. Then from the return to Babylon up until the time of Jesus. Now, can we consider genealogy as a historical list? Of course, the answer is definitely no, in the sense of history as we know now. These are lists, exact list. No, it's not. But it tells us, on the other hand, the history or the lineage or it gives us a sense of connection. And besides, it's important in the Hebrew tradition, it's very important that two families must have to keep their genealogy. The first one are the priestly families. It's very important for them because you cannot become a priest unless you are able to trace your lineage if I'm not mistaken, up to 6 generations. So, or 7, I forgot now, but more or less it's about that number. You can only be credited as a priest or a Levite if you can trace your lineage up to 6 or 7 generations back. So that's very important. Another group of people who maintains a very important record of their ancestors are the kingly families. Those families that were descendants of David. Because, of course, the reason is obvious that they have to maintain these records in their own family precisely because it is needed to prove that they are of David's lineage. So we have noticed there are two categories of families that needs to maintain their genealogy. That is the priestly families, those who are of the tribe of Levi, and that of the tribe of Judah. Now let's look into this. The first two parts, that of Abraham and Jesse, that's well known. Everybody knows that. Then from David to the Babylonian exile, everybody knows it. The third part of the genealogy is where things got a little bit cloudy or muddy or a little bit gray. Why? Because remember that the Babylonian captivity came about because the Babylonians conquered the southern kingdom or Judah, the kingdom of Judah. The Babylonians exiled the elites. Okay, after several years there, like about 70 years in Babylon, there was a new dominant power in the world. No longer the Babylonians, but the Persians. And it was Cyrus who commanded that the Israelites who were exiled, should return to their land and rebuild Jerusalem. And the person that was sent, of course, Zerubbabel, as the governor. But take note that the kingly family was not reinstalled as such. The Holy Land was under the rule of Persia with these governors. And as I said, Zerubbabel was sent as a governor, not as a king, but as a kind of provincial governor. In other words, after Zerubbabel, everything now was underground. So if you're going to read the genealogy of Matthew, which I would read now, and you may open your Bibles, in Matthew chapter 1, verse 1 to 16, but I'm going to read the third part of the genealogy. After the deportation to Babylon, Jechoniah was the father of Salatiel, and Salatiel the father of Zerubbabel. This is the person that I was talking about in terms of the governorship. And Zerubbabel the father of Abiud, Abiud the father of Eliakim, Eliakim the father of Azor, Azor the father of Zadok, and Zadok the father of Akim, and Akim the father of Eliud, and Eliud the father of Eleazar, Eleazar the father of Mathan, Mathan the father of Jacob, and Jacob was the father of Joseph, the husband of Mary, of whom Jesus was born, who is called Christ. Okay, notice that as I was saying, this part of the genealogy is now gray. It's not that clear. Why is it not clear? Precisely because the royal family of David, although it was not completely, well, it was cut off, but it still remained. There are still descendants of David. Pero hindi siya official. Nga this is now the ruling family of the kingdom, as if the family, the royal family, was reinstalled or restored. No. So the descendants now of David have no political power anymore. And maybe they don't even have possessions. Maybe some of them might be a little bit well off than the rest of the family. Pero basically, they are far, far different from the royal house when it was in its glorious years. They are not really significant for the public. But of course, maybe some knows that, of course, so-and-so is a descendant of David, belongs to the royal family before, but they are no longer influential nor wealthy. Okay? Saint Joseph was a royal personality. Although, in the lowly circumstance of being a carpenter on that particular era or period when Jesus was born. According to Matthew's genealogy, the fact is Joseph is in the lines of kings. You see? And that's very important. These are all lists of kings up until Zerubbabel. Well, maybe not even Zerubbabel, because I already mentioned it was already a petty governor, but for the first two parts, these are all lists of kings. And Joseph stands as one of those persons in the long line of kings. So, what is the lesson that we can learn from this genealogy of Matthew? First, as I already mentioned, Joseph was kingly. He is in the line of kings. He belongs to the lineage of kings. Unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, I don't know, but by providence of God, we find Joseph as a lowly carpenter in a small town of Nazareth. He already almost like personifying or a foreshadow of his own son, Jesus Christ, of his foster son, Jesus. Why? Remember, Jesus was God, but he humbled himself to become human. Here, Saint Joseph is king. He is in the lineage of kings, but he accepts the providential design of God that he is going to be a carpenter, a lowly, humble carpenter. And now, a portrait of Joseph emerged. And what is that portrait? A portrait of a humble man. Why is he humble? Not because he has no choice, but he was humble because he knew who he is. He knew that he is king. He is a potential king. He came from a long line of kings, and he stands as one among those. But even though he is of royal personality, he accepted his being carpenter. He did not incite a revolution or a rebellion. No. He did not went into a leadership role like Bar Kokhba or many of those messianic figures in the intertestamental period. No. He accepted the providence of God as that design wherein he became a humble carpenter. But in his humility, he was rewarded by God, because now he is not just a humble carpenter, but he is the foster father of the King of Kings. So I think we will end here. It was quite a long discourse. Next episode of this series, we will discuss the circumstances that surrounds the birth of Jesus, particularly of Jesus and Herod in the massacre of the innocents. But we will also focus our attention to Joseph. Thank you very much and hope to see you again for the next episode. Bye-bye.